So I'll be talking about digital storytelling, and these are short video presentations using a few components of multimedia. They mostly include recorded voice audio with music underlaid, and then mostly still images, so photographs, but there are some opportunities for moving like video as well. But the most important thing is that the images coincide with a story that is being told in a short form, 5 to 7 minutes. I've actually found in my classes that 5 to 7 minutes is quite long. So I cut my assignments down to 3 minutes. So depending on what it's used for, I think the time can be adjusted. But these are generally short, not anything feature-length video. They're intended to document, explore, and communicate course concepts and connections from outside the course to course concepts. That's what I have used them for in a couple courses so far. The videos themselves are great beyond using them in courses for teaching. They can distill, consolidate, and communicate findings from research, findings from any other explorations. And it's also a great way to teach and learn for myself as well, teach new digital technology methods and programs that do video and audio visual editing. So, and I'll talk more about that in a moment. So just to start us off, I'd like to share some examples. There's two examples that I'll show. One is from a previous institution where I worked in 2019 to 2021, Kenyon College. It was there that I took a digital storytelling workshop, and I have resources from where I took that workshop linked in the end of this presentation. Because I don't teach there anymore, my videos from my classes are lost to the internet, and I don't have access to them anymore since I'm not on their LMS software. But I do have an example from another course that was very similar to how I use them in my courses to explore aspects of identities. And the next example that I'll show just a small part of is how to do some more historical research-based videos for a class project as well. Okay, so I'm going to share first the video that is a little more traditional, exploring identity and let's see, images and a story of a student's identity. Okay.
My name is Samuel Canseco. I was born in sunny San Diego, California, and in my family, I am part of the first generation to go to college. My parents believed that in order to get a better life in this country, I had to attend college. Being a first generation college student for me meant that I had to sit during my school conferences in order to translate for my parents. It meant that I had to wait to get picked up from elementary school at 5 p.m. every day because my parents worked until then. It meant that I had to landscape every Saturday and every summer with my father to earn a living. Neither one of my parents attended high school, but they wanted to make sure that their kids continue with their education so that we didn't have to work under the hot sun like that. Despite my parents not being able to help me with my homework past fourth grade, they always supported me in every way that they could. I detested being picked up at school in my gardening pickup truck. I was embarrassed if people found out that I slept in the living room with my brother, or that my dad was a gardener and not a doctor or lawyer like most of the parents of kids in my school. I was ashamed of my culture while being in a school where I was the only Hispanic in my grade. I started to drift away from regional Mexican music and attempted to fit in my new high school as much as I could. I found myself wearing a mask that was created in hopes to fit in, but rather than helping me, it was causing pain and self-hatred. I'd become a completely different person while wearing my mask. I became a ghost. I was lost. After seeing my parents work endless hours under the sun in order for my brother and I to have what they once did not, made me realize that being ashamed of my parents' hard work was not the solution. It was time for me to remove my mask. I then returned to my true rooted self and continued to listen to my Spanish music. I began to be a chambelán at quinceañeras and wasn't afraid to show people who I was. Being rooted to my culture brought me joy for the first time while being in a predominantly white school. So I became a regional Mexican band singer and the vice president of my school. Being rooted in my culture shifted self-hatred to joy and inspiration. In those roots, I found my true self. Rooted, I am a successful, maskless, unashamed Mexican American.
Okay. So I like that video as an example because it clearly shows the components of underlying music, the audio recording of a spoken narrative. The assignment for this class was for a heritage language Spanish course and for students to explore an aspect of their identity, especially with coming to college and adjustment to the college community. So this video also does a good job of integrating the personal photos of the student with some internet images, like stock images that come in to illuminate parts of the story. And there were also some one or two uses of video as well. So that is kind of how all of those parts can work together. So without exploring aspects of identity, I've used this in one of my classes at UNF so far in a Peoples and Cultures of South Asia class. I'm going to show just a small beginning part of a video that a student made to explore a concept not related to their identity or anything personal, but to show a little bit like a research paper put into the digital story format. I have it in YouTube here. Here we go.
Story of Baft Hawa, its history, and the beginning of its reclamation from the legacy of colonialism. Thy bride might as well clothe herself with the garment of the wind as stand forth publicly naked under her clouds of muslin. Petronius, 1st century CE. Translates to woven air. 9 yards was said to have been able to fold up into a matchbox and be so fluid that you would have been able to pull an entire bolt of it through a ring. Prized for its fineness, softness, and transparency, Baft Hawa, also referred to as Dhaka muslin, was once one of the most expensive fabrics that money could buy. There was a point in time where the finest weaves cost more than 26 times as much as the best silks in the world.
To create a digital story, I use in my courses scaffolded assignments. I ask students to first brainstorm and submit a topic summary, something they would like to present about. They write a script, and then they do a peer review of each other's scripts, two students, so groups of trade their scripts around, and I have a rubric and a handout that they fill out. And this was a really important step because it creates accountability. These presentations can feel like high stakes presentations for students because of the visual, the audio visual component. So it holds them to a certain standard, and they're able to see also what their classmates are doing. So they don't end up being embarrassed on presentation day, having something that's radically different from their classmates. So the peer review part is very important. And then the final, usually as a final day presentation, is the digital story presentations where each student shares and we discuss a little bit about each one. So other components that I also include in this is teaching, like a day workshop. One of the classes is dedicated to learning the digital media technology, to going through how to use the software. I have previously used a program called Hindenburg. I think they have actually moved away from visual components, so it's great for audio editing. But to do all of the components together, the visual and the audio together, students actually recommended CapCut. If you're familiar with, it's an app, and you can also use it on a desktop. So it's kind of like making TikTok videos, but you can make them oriented for a cell phone or oriented landscape for more traditional video formatting. So CapCut is one. I have a list of these as well. OpenShot is a free and pretty user-friendly, like basic software. It was not well liked by my students for whatever reason. They preferred CapCut. The Adobe suite also has video and audio editing software as well. And some of these you can record into the app or the website. That's one option, usually a pretty good option, and then you can underlay the music, or you can record in a voice memo or record in an external format, and then import that audio file into one of these software pieces. So the other part that I have there is when creating a digital story and assigning this in my classes, I also scaffold examples. I usually start with showing them just as I did now. This is the final product that you're working towards. And then we listen to stories. So we first learn how to tell a very short story about an aspect of identity or a topic of research. We do this through listening to examples from places like The Moth, places that have some creative storytelling examples online, YouTube also, and then looking at putting those together. What are some examples of digital stories, and how to pay attention to the story aspect of it, and how to see the multiple components overlaid. So these are all scaffolded into the semester-long course. This is an example of the audio editing software that I used. I used Adobe. Let's see, what is it called? I'm forgetting the name. I know Premiere is the Adobe Audition for audio editing on a recent video I made about my research. And I used CapCut for putting together the video component. So that green line at the bottom is the audio that I edited and compiled. I chopped up different recordings that students and I had made and put them into a story, a full script that we had written and told a story. And that was done in Audition. And then I had tried to use Adobe Premiere. I did not find it very easy to use, but I think there's just a steep learning curve with some of these programs. It can seem intimidating, but once you get the hang of it, play around with it and start putting in some of the aspects like transitions and timing with sound, then you catch on and it becomes a little bit more intuitive. So here's another example. You can have images, and then also we had some PowerPoint slides that I made screenshots of and added them into the digital story too. This is an example of how I grade the digital story projects in my classes. So each component has a pretty fair chunk of a 100 point 100% class. And you'll see there also, I didn't add this into the other breakdown of scaffolded assignments, but I have students also complete an annotated bibliography to connect their project topic to scholarship as well, to peer-reviewed research and articles, books. So there's that component of learning some traditional research aspects as well. This is the rubric that I use to evaluate the final project. So talking about the story as a main component and having all of those three components, voice, music, and visuals completed and included in the story, a time limit, also connections to a class concept that usually I ask students to work into their scripts. So that's part of the story script that they do and evaluate each other in the peer review for as well. And then the presentation aspect as well, along with giving some comments and questions to their peers for the other videos they see. So this is how I use digital storytelling in my classes. And here are some resources if you're interested in reading more scholarly articles about this. And I have one that I had written as well, Digital Storytelling as Pedagogy, in my linguistic anthropology class. Yeah, I find that the students, when I've used it in classes, I've used this in one class when I was teaching at Kenyon College, similar to the video that I shared, to ask students to connect aspects of their identities to concepts in a linguistic anthropology class. The class touched on pretty sensitive topics relating to power, discrimination, and language. So the video format it allowed students to do two things. They took a lot of ownership over their stories, over their videos, and it also provided a way that they could maybe distance themselves however much they wanted to from potentially sensitive topics, or show very sensitive, vulnerable sides of their identities to their classmates and to myself with this format. The addition of the individual photographs, the personal photos, also seemed to be a highlight for students, that they could incorporate these in a way that was a little bit more creative beyond embedding them into an essay, for example. So I set aside one full day in class to review software and audio visual editing. This is in the longer course periods of 3 hours or so. And I've held this session at UNF, at least. I've held it in the library, where students all have access to laptops. So in my classes, I do actually ask students to bring a technology piece, as I often ask them to explore things on the internet or read downloaded documents. And so they're used to doing that, but on these days I do bring them to the library so that everyone can have a laptop to work on. And I asked them if that is something that they want to continue working on. And so far, all of the students said once they learned how to put the components together, they were comfortable doing it at home. And some even made their videos on their phones, because they are used to making videos like TikToks. So my job is a little bit easier now that students are making Instagram Reels, TikToks, things like that, that already put these components together. So it's more like framing what students already know and do, and then also providing this open source software if they want an alternative to what they might already be using. Yes, when I used this at my previous institution, I had asked students if they wanted, for their consent, if they wanted this video to be set aside as an example on the institution's website as a digital storytelling course. I think only a few students opted to not go with that option. Since then, I think that website has come down because I'm not faculty there anymore, but I do like having these posted somewhere. The class that I taught, since these were research videos, I didn't have them posted anywhere other than their submissions to Canvas. But in the past, I've made blogs or websites attached to specific course or campus websites that showcase student work in this way. I do like having them go out to the public to show as examples of digital storytelling, examples of how curriculum can be integrated into this methodology and dissemination process too. I usually have moments in class where they talk to each other and share their topics. But in the peer review process, I ask them to exchange their scripts. They come with the scripts printed out or written up in some way that they can share them or email them to their classmates. I ask them to read each other's scripts for a coherent story. I should have had the rubric probably in the presentation, but a coherent story, connection to course concepts, the feasibility of adding images. Does this seem feasible and appropriate for their peers? And they also evaluate the sources. So asking, is there anything missing from the story? Are there any remaining questions that their peers have as they're reading the stories and seeing the sources they're connecting them to that they should maybe fill in for? Or again, that aspect of communicating to an audience who does not have the same expertise as them, either talking about their identities or talking about a research aspect in class. And so each of those are connected to points, and then they exchange their papers again, and they usually have some time to then tweak and change parts of their stories, fill in those gaps that students had questions about, saying, I'd like a little more information here, or this part of the story doesn't really make sense, so they have time to change that as well. And then that becomes an important component of their grade and the overall assignment project. But it also, again, allows them for some accountability of creating the project. They can't do it the night before, so they have to do these assignments in steps and have their work done in stages, and seeing the quality of work that their classmates are doing to inspire their to do the similar quality of work. So yeah, I've done this in two modalities before. One was in an online class, and so we had it was a synchronous online remote course, and we sat just like this in a Zoom room, and everyone shared their videos. I think they had sent them to me prior, and so I had them queued up to run. But the structure is really the same as using it in my People and Cultures of South Asia course last semester, where it's usually how I ran the last day of class, or no, actually it was how I ran finals. So they came on the finals day, and everyone attended that session together and then presented their videos one by one in whatever order they wanted to. They could speak a little bit about the video if they wanted to introduce it in some way, but if they had done the assignment up until that point, they should not have needed to say anything beyond the story speaking for itself. And then after the video screens, I ask students at least for a couple comments on questions, anything that they want to learn more about, any questions that they want to ask about how the process of making the video went, and comments, anything they want to comment on for their peers. After the group shares, after everyone shares, I do give them an evaluation handout where I ask them to reflect on the process of making the video. This is more for me to learn how students are receiving the project, where that they enjoyed learning the technology, thinking about using it in other ways, and they appreciated presenting information in a different way than maybe the other papers that they're writing for classes or other projects that they've done before. So it seems like it's hitting home that this is to learn technological literacy as well. I usually highlight that these are skills that they can put on their resumes, and then have this project and product that they can also share out as they might need to demonstrate these skills.
Students.
Yes, so I used a few pieces of hardware and software that we have at our disposal in the media lab to get really clear audio. High quality microphone is very useful. That is something else I offer to students. The class that I taught, the students preferred to record just into their phones, but I did offer recording devices, which we have in the DHI as well, and high quality microphones to screen out external sounds. So sometimes they say, oh, I can do that in the editing process. I can take out the background sounds, but it is really different than using these high-powered, high-quality microphones that we have available in the DHI. Yeah, this practice, I actually created a digital story out of a emerging research project that I'm continuing to work on with student research assistants. And I was creating a video for the Linguistic Society of America's annual conference in January. So they have 5-minute linguist presentations, which is exactly like the in video format. It's exactly like making a digital story, or moving through a recorded PowerPoint with voiceover, for example. So like a recorded presentation. So with this acceptance to the conference, I had my research assistants and I compile a script summarizing the project where it stands currently. So the research question we had, the method for data collection, and then summarizing some of the findings and significance, and then where the project is going next. And we compiled this into a narrative story script. and put music and all of the components of a digital story into this very short form presentation of research. It allowed me to really distill some of the ideas that were coming out of my research so far. It forced me to be concise about that and the summary of what I was finding so far with this project, and really think about communicating it, disseminating the information, how to talk to other people about what we are finding, and how to present that in a way that, knowing that this isn't going to be like a formal panel presentation where there can be conversation, there might be a specific academic audience. It really helped me put into more accessible and concise presentation of emerging findings, emerging importance out of this research that I just started last year with the DHI Faculty Fellowship.